There are moments in life when the pain inflicted by others feels almost unbearable. You trusted them, you loved them, you believed in them, and yet they hurt you. Not just with words, not just with actions, but in a way that left a mark on your soul. But beloved, what do we do with that pain? What happens when the people we opened our hearts to turn around and wound us the most? Many of us are walking around with unspoken questions. God, did you see that? Did you hear what they said? Are you going to do something about it? This message is for every soul that has been bruised in silence. For every heart that has had to keep smiling while bleeding internally. It is for those who are waiting, praying, hoping for justice, but even more than justice, for healing. You need to know something deeply today. God is not blind to your pain. He is not absent in your suffering, and he is most certainly not indifferent to how you've been treated. Our God is just. He is compassionate, and he knows exactly how to deal with those who hurt you. This isn't about revenge. It's about divine justice. It's about the ways of God that are higher than our ways. The ways that seem slow but are sure. The ways that heal you without hardening you. The ways that teach, redeem, restore, and yes, the ways that vindicate. Today, we are stepping into that divine understanding of how God deals with those who hurt his children. Not with bitterness, not with resentment, but with revelation. Let's walk in truth, let's walk in healing, and let's discover what God really does with those who hurt us. It is one of the greatest lies of the enemy to convince us that our pain goes unnoticed by God, that our tears fall in vain. But the word of God in Psalm 56:8 says, "You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book." Beloved, this is not metaphorical sentiment. It is divine truth. When you cry, heaven pays attention. Your tears are not just a release, they are a record. Each drop is a prayer, a petition, a cry for justice. And God, in his infinite compassion, holds every single one. There are wounds that no one sees, silent sufferings, nights spent in anguish because of the actions of someone who should have protected you, loved you, or at the very least respected you. And yet they caused pain instead. In those hidden moments, you may have felt alone, but you were never unseen. God was there. His spirit hovered over your brokenness, ministering to you even when you couldn't feel it. Your tears became a sacred offering poured out on an invisible altar where God himself leaned in to receive them. People may overlook what you went through. They may minimize your story, but God doesn't. He doesn't rush your healing, and he doesn't skip over your hurt. He's a God of detail. The same God who numbers the hairs on your head is the same God who counts every tear you shed. He is intimately involved in your emotional journey. His compassion is not passive, it is active. Some of us have been taught to toughen up, to hide our pain, to keep going and pretend that everything is okay. But God says, bring me your tears. Not just your words, not just your prayers, but your tears. He welcomes them. He honors them. He responds to them. In fact, there are moments where your tears speak louder than your voice. They carry a language of suffering that heaven understands. And the Father listens intently. When someone hurts you deeply, it can feel like a tearing of the soul. The betrayal, the rejection, the cruelty, it echoes in your spirit. But do you know what else echoes in heaven? your cries. They don't bounce off the ceiling, they rise before the throne. And in the courts of heaven, justice begins with awareness. God is not a distant observer. He is a loving Father. One who sits with you in your pain. One who holds you when you feel like breaking. One who says, I see, I know, and I will respond. He doesn't just see your tears, he sanctifies them. He transforms your sorrow into something sacred. In the kingdom of God, nothing is wasted, not even your weeping. And so when you wonder if he knows, when you question if he's aware of how deep the wound goes, remember this. He's not just watching, he's collecting. In his perfect time, he will turn every tear into a testimony. One of the most difficult but powerful things God does in our lives is allow us to see people for who they truly are. Sometimes the people who wound us the most are not strangers, but those we welcome into the sacred spaces of our lives. Our hearts, our homes, our trusts. And when they turn against us, it can feel like betrayal came out of nowhere. But in truth, God had been watching what you could not see. He had been discerning what you were too loyal, too hopeful, or too blinded by love to notice. God is not only a healer, he is a revealer. And when he sees that the presence of certain people in your life is more dangerous than their absence, he begins to expose. Exposure is not always dramatic. It's not always public. Sometimes it is subtle. A conversation you overhear, a shift in attitude, a pattern you finally recognize, and suddenly your eyes open. Suddenly what once seemed like loyalty now looks like manipulation. What once seemed like friendship now reeks of envy. What once looked like support is exposed as sabotage. It hurts. The truth always does, especially when it involves people you never imagined will be a source of your pain. But the exposure is not for your destruction, it's for your protection. God will not allow you to walk into your future blind to the intentions of those around you. He knows what's ahead. He sees the destiny you carry. And he knows that not everyone in your circle is worthy of access to where you are going. Think about Judas. He walked with Jesus, talked with Jesus, ate with Jesus. And yet he betrayed Jesus with a kiss. A kiss. Something that is supposed to symbolize affection was the very thing used to identify the target for destruction. That is how betrayal operates. It masquerades as love. But God, in his infinite wisdom, allows Judas to reveal themselves, not because he wants to hurt you, but because he wants to prevent further damage. And here's what's powerful. God often lets the exposure happen just before your elevation. He allows the mask to fall right before he shifts you to a new dimension. Because the exposure is not the end, it's the beginning of your freedom. It is the divine unveiling that breaks the illusions and aligns you with the truth. It liberates you from soul ties that were keeping you bound to dysfunction. You may ask, why didn't God show me sooner? Beloved, sometimes you were not ready to see it. Your heart wasn't strong enough. Your identity wasn't rooted enough. But as you grew, as you matured, as you drew closer to God, your discernment sharpened, and when the time was right. This is not just about pain, it's about clarity. God brings the hidden into the light so you can stop questioning yourself, stop doubting your instinct, stop justifying behavior that was never acceptable to begin with. He lets the true nature of others come forth, not so you can retaliate, but so you can release. So you can stop investing emotionally where there is no reciprocity. so you can stop carrying dead weight into divine assignment. God's exposure is surgical. It cuts to heal. It reveals to protect. And when he allows it, he's not being cruel. He's being kind. Because the longer you remain in ignorance, the more damage your heart endures. But when light shines on the truth, you are empowered to choose differently, to walk wisely, to love with boundaries, to discern with courage. So if people are revealing their true colors, let them. Don't chase illusions. Don't mourn the version of them you created in your mind. God is showing you the truth because he is preparing you for something that requires clarity, protection, and alignment. And sometimes that begins with seeing who people really are, not who you hoped they would be. There's a sacred pattern in the way God works. He separates before he elevates. He distances you from environments, people, and situations before he reveals the fullness of his justice. And while separation often feels like rejection, it's actually protection. It's positioning. It's preparation. You may be asking God to defend you, to prove your innocence, to expose those who wronged you. But before vindication comes, God often says, come out from among them. Separation can be confusing because it feels like loss. The people you thought you needed, he removes. The places you felt safe, he uproots you from. The relationships that seem foundational, he begins to shake. But what you don't realize in the moment is that God is removing you from the noise so that he can speak clearly. He's taking you out of toxic proximity so that the healing he has for you isn't contaminated by bitterness or distraction. Sometimes we want God to vindicate us while we're still in the circle that wounded us. On the applause, the apologies, the validation from the same hands that tried to crush us. But God's justice doesn't always happen in front of your enemies. It often happens after he has separated you from them. That way, when he lifts you, when he restores you, when he blesses you, it's not about proving a point. It's about fulfilling his purpose. Think of Joseph, betrayed by his brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused and imprisoned. If anyone had a right to demand instant vindication, it was him. But God didn't vindicate Joseph in the pit. He didn't vindicate him in Potiphar's house. He didn't even vindicate him in the prison. He waited until Joseph was completely separated, physically, emotionally, spiritually, from the people who harmed him. Then he lifted him up. Then he placed him in a position of influence. Then he made him ruler in Egypt. Why? Because the vindication was never about revenge. It was about divine destiny. It was about saving life. God separates you to change your environment. Sometimes you're too close to what's contaminating your spirit, too close to voices that gaslight your pain, too close to expectations that limit your identity. He has to pull you out so that he can rebuild you in peace. Separation is where transformation begins. It's where you begin to see yourself not through the lens of what they said or did, but through the truth of who God says you are. And during that separation, don't be surprised if it feels silent. Heaven can feel quiet in the space between hurt and healing. But that's because God is working behind the scenes. He's arranging things. He's softening hearts. He's shifting atmospheres. He's preparing not just your vindication, but your promotion. And when he does move, it will be unmistakable. Separation is also a test. It's where God watches to see if you will hold on to offense or choose forgiveness. If you will let your heart become bitter or let him make it better. Will you trust him enough to be quiet while he works? Will you trust him when your name is being slandered, your motives questioned, and your silence misunderstood? True vindication isn't just when people see you were right. It's when they realize God's hand was on you the entire time.